Have you seen these? They're little individually wrapped cheese wheels. I recently discovered them, and I learned that each one is coated in a non-toxic edible wax. I don't really care for them that much, but what I'm interested in is the wax. Apparently, it's a blend of paraffin and microcrystalline wax. Microcrystalline wax is what I use for bronze casting, so today I'm going to see if I can use cheese wax to do some bronze casting. So while I collect the wax, I need to think, what am I going to make with it? And I'm thinking something simple, something precious.
Precious?
Like a ring.
One ring to rule them all.
Let's make a ring.
A master ring.
The wax is so soft I figured I'd just smash it all together until one big conglomerate. And I don't think it'll take that many cheese wheels to get enough for a ring. Once it's all consolidated, I need to think about how big I'm going to need to make this. And I'm going to use a 3/4 inch dowel to give it a perfectly round center, and that's about the right size for my finger. I don't want the wax to stick to the wood, so I'm going to surround it with aluminum foil. That should easily slide off and let me free up the ring. So now I'll roll out the wax to a long cylinder and then flatten it out. Then I'll use one of the tearing strips to measure around the dowel to see how long I need to make the wax piece. With jewelry, precision is everything. Now with that cut, it should perfectly wrap around my wooden dowel. Well, you know what they say. Measure once, cut twice. But I also didn't account for the inner and outer circumferences. They're not going to be the same. So we'll cut it again. I'm going to use a tearing strip again though, because it looks like it's about the right width for the band. I'm going to roughly cut this into shape and then whittle it down closer and closer as I go. Being that this wax is so sticky, it's certainly not the easiest to work. Generally, jewelers will use a much harder wax that's a lot easier to file and carve to precise detail. With this wax, I'll make do. Now the aluminum foil slides off the dowel easily, but the ring is still stuck to it, so I need to find a way to get that off without misshaping the ring. I found that by using a lighter to heat up the aluminum foil, the ring slides off pretty easily, and I tried a couple different methods. I don't even need to crumple the aluminum, I can leave it round and it still slides off. This wax is really quite soft and it's really easy to deform and misshape in this stuff. But I've created a crude ring blank and it's slightly oversized, so I'm going to cast this into bronze and file it down into shape once we get it done. I've seen people sprue rings multiple different ways. Some people add multiple sprues and some people use just one. I'm going to try just one. I use a soldering iron plugged into a dimmer switch, and that lowers the power enough that it's suitable for wax spruing. Then I'll get my flask ready and it's time to pour the investment. Once that's all done, I put it in the vacuum chamber to suck out all the bubbles. I don't want any flaws in this ring. I'll melt out the wax plug just so there's a little less wax to burn out in the kiln. In the kiln, the temperature is slowly ramped up to about 1100 degrees. And once all the wax is burned out, it's time for the metal. For this ring, I'll be using some homemade silicone bronze. It's always one of my favorite parts when I get to see the shimmering molten metal down below. I'll scrape off the dross and then it'll be ready to pour. I use 100% silicone to make a liquid gasket that'll seal the flask to the vacuum chamber. Generally, when I watch jewelers do this on YouTube, their flask isn't red hot. When I pull mine out, it's usually red hot, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So if you know anything about pouring temperatures of the flask, let me know. It's always kind of tricky for me to flip these things over. I don't want to damage any of the molds inside, and I don't want it to roll away. Once that's settled though, it's time to pour. It's looking good so far. Now I'm going to carefully cut it off to sprues. You know, I never thought about it, but now I'm wondering, at what point did the ring turn people invisible? Was it as soon as it's cast? I guess not yet. Any nerds out there that can answer that one? I'll start with some rounded files and start cleaning out the inside of the ring. Once the inside is pretty clean, I'll start working on the edges. So I got the sides and the inside of the ring all cleaned up, but it's way too thick, so now I'm going to start thinning down the outside, and I want to maintain a uniform thickness. Now I've seen jewelers take things like this and they'll scratch a perfectly uniform line all the way around, so they know exactly how thick it needs to be. This is plastic. I can't scratch anything with that, so I need to figure out another way. I thought if I used some stain I could paint a coat over the metal and scratch into that, but it didn't quite work, so instead I used a candle. The candle leaves a nice even coating of soot that I can scratch into. The problem is the soot wipes off super easily, so instead I'm going to follow the line I drew with a metal pin and actually scratch it into the metal. Once that's finished, I'm going to break out the files and try to file it down. But bronze is a little bit harder than I anticipated, so instead, I'm going to break out some power tools. This sander lets me still be pretty precise and gets the job done a whole lot faster. That ring gets awfully hot though, so I keep dipping it in snow to cool it down. It's starting to clean up, but I want it to be rounded instead of squared off, so I'm going to recoat it in soot and draw a center line. And here I'll use a file to make a mark all along the center line so I can follow it when the soot rubs off. This 1-inch belt sander that I got worked pretty well to round it off. Then I went back to the Dremel and used a small rounded stone to get the inside of the ring. Contour the edges and clean it up just a little bit more. I'll go back to the files for the last bit of precision filing. And then the sandpaper. For the last step, I'll use some felt tip tools on my Dremel and some polishing wax to give it a nice shine. And of course, this ring will have to go on a chain. And with that, we'll call it done. A ring from cheese wax. Not bad. I'd say it's pretty precious. Let me know what you think of this one. Come on back for the next project. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.